This is Turd Flinging Monkey for TFM News. I'm not going to be responding to a particular article. I'm going to be responding to a trend of articles that I've seen. From Black Lives Matter to this stuff about standing with police and these police that have been shot and all this bullshit going on. I want to talk about what's actually the problem with law enforcement, and it's not what you think. At least this is my take on it. Obviously, you're free to disagree. I think the problem with law enforcement is they've gone from protectors of law and order and defenders of the people and the stuff that they're supposed to being glorified tax collectors for the state. And the reason why I say that is they spend much more time going after victimless crimes in order to get money than they do actually going after criminals that pose a physical threat to innocent people. If you look at the actual numbers in prison, the actual people who are locked up in prison, most are there for nonviolent offenses. They shouldn't even be in prison. Prison should only exist to keep violent, dangerous people away from the general population. If they're not violent and dangerous, there's no reason to lock them up. If they owe someone money, they can work and pay it off. I mean, being in prison isn't getting that person they owe money to their money. So what's the point of putting them in prison? But what happens is the state needs more money. Now, if you look at the way taxes work, if you look at your income taxes, you probably pay about a quarter to half your money in taxes between federal taxes, state, local, all the entitlement taxes for FICA, all the little things, the way the government nickels and dimes you, you're probably paying about 25 to 50% of your income just in taxes. But that's not enough because the government just needs more money. So what they do is they send law enforcement with certain quotas to get more money. This is why you see cops pulling over people in speed traps, going 1 mile over the speed limit, even if they're going with the flow of traffic. But then you have neighborhoods where there's just criminals running rampage, shooting people, and the cops are nowhere to be found. They may come like an hour later to respond to a call, and all they'll say is, we can't catch them. Oh yeah, this happens all the time. They don't care. They don't care about actually protecting innocent people from criminals. They care more about making money for the government to help prop up their budgets because they can't get enough of our money. And the best example I have, I actually will link to this article. It's an article about a gay escort service in New York that was shut down for money. That was the only reason it was shut down, was so that the government could seize their assets. Now, usually when it comes to escort services and prostitution, they shut it down under the auspices of human trafficking, these poor exploited girls, and oh my gosh, the poor women's. But this was a escort site, or an escort service, for men, for gay men specifically. It was consensual. You had the gay men going on dates and getting paid by other gay men, and that's the way it worked. There were no women involved, there was no human trafficking involved, it was all consensual. There wasn't even an allegation that everything wasn't consensual. The only thing that the prosecutor said when they raided this place and took all this money was that it was against the law, and they seized like millions of dollars of assets, and they're going to keep it. That's what they do. They find some enterprise that's completely victimless, but that makes a lot of money, and that's the target. So if you're just running some sort of escort service, you have a huge target on your back because the feds need money, and they're going to raid you and take your money. But if you're actually murdering people, well, you're just a poor criminal. There's no money in it for the law enforcement to actually go after you and stop you. If you're in law enforcement, your job is to get criminals that are murdering people and committing crimes. I mean, even if you're committing a crime, if it's a victimless crime, that should be low priority. But if you make money that the government can seize, then you become a high priority target, because the government can seize that money and help balance their budget. And that's the problem with law enforcement. They don't protect the population, they feed off the population because they're doing it on behalf of the government. So what you have is you have people who aren't committing any violent crimes. Maybe they're just selling dope or something. And the police are going after them so they could seize their assets, so they could take these millions of dollars of drugs and cash that they have, because obviously selling drugs is a cash-based business, and that they can just seize it and add it to their coffers. So prison is full of these non-violent offenders. Do they have money? Is it going to make the department money for them to do their job? Well, then they'll do it. If they can seize someone's assets, they'll spring into action. But if it doesn't make the department money, if it doesn't make the state money, if they're just doing their job and protecting the people, but it's not actually going to make any money for the government, they don't care. That's a low priority. It doesn't matter what the law is. It's all about money. And that's the problem. If police want respect in these communities, if they want to stop being looked at as oppressors and abusers, they need to protect the people from the criminals, not just go after criminals who aren't even hurting anyone to shake them down for money. Because you're just a tax collector at that point. And nobody likes a tax collector. Nobody riots over actual criminals that murder people when they get shot by the police. They riot over people who aren't hurting anyone, even if they're breaking a law. I mean, we all break laws every day, whether we mean to or not. I mean, there's so many laws on the books, you really can't help but break the law. You're probably breaking a law right now. I don't even know. So I think everybody should get behind the idea of restoring the police to their proper role of enforcing the law and protecting the people. They should be protectors of the people. It's like you look at, old cowboy movies and you have the sheriff. When the sheriff restores order, he doesn't do it by shaking down each citizen for money. He does it by going to the criminal and enforcing the law, maybe having a showdown or something like that. But he confronts the criminal. That's why the sheriffs in these cowboy movies are respected. If the sheriff went around just stealing from people or shaking them down for money every 5 minutes, the sheriff wouldn't be respected. The people would hate him. That's when you have like Robin Hood, where you have the sheriff of Nottingham, who basically takes taxes from the people. He was the bad guy. When the law enforcement is basically a tax collector, the people hate him. When the sheriff is a protector of law and order and protects the people from the criminals, then the people respect and admire the law enforcement official. So if police want to be respected, they don't need a PR campaign, the whole Black Lives Matter, stand with police bullshit. None of that even matters. If police were actually enforcing the law and protecting people instead of being tax collectors, people wouldn't hate them. People wouldn't want them out of their communities. People wouldn't be shooting them. Because they wouldn't be shooting them. Like, when the police go after drug dealers who aren't hurting anyone, gun them down, that starts a chain reaction which leads to our current predicament. Just stop doing it. Protect people from violent criminals, not people who aren't hurting anyone. Prison should be full of only violent criminals. It shouldn't be full of people selling drugs or being behind on their child support. That's total bullshit. They're not hurting anyone. They don't need to be locked up. They don't need to have their lives destroyed and lose their jobs. I think this is a concept that all parties can get behind. I think law enforcement doesn't enjoy being tax collectors for the government any more than we do. I think law enforcement should demand that they be restored to their proper role, and that the government collect their own damn taxes. If they want more money from the people, they can raise their taxes and get voted out of office for it. I think less people would be shot by the police if the police focused on actual violent criminals and not non-violent bullshit like selling drugs or something like that to consenting adults that just want to get high. If the issue remains an issue of black versus white or rule of law versus anarchy, nothing's going to get done. Nothing's going to get solved. The problem's going to remain. People are still going to get shot. The police are still going to be going after people for no other reason than they have money to confiscate and not the actual danger they pose to society. The problem isn't racial. The problem isn't that law enforcement shouldn't exist. The problem is police aren't protecting citizens, they're acting as tax collectors. So those are my thoughts on a lot of these interrelated stories, and I'll post some links if you aren't familiar with the scenario. Anyway, this is Turd Flinging Monkey signing off.